I want to welcome everyone today to the Lunch and Learn on Enterprise PDM templates. A couple of housekeeping issues before we get going. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to post it in the question section. I will take some time at the end and go through and try to give you a good answer on each of your questions. So as part of our Lunch and Learn series, we decided a few months back that we wanted to start to bring in products other than SOLIDWORKS at least once a month to help educate our customers as to what capabilities are out there in these products, and maybe those of you who have products like Enterprise PDM, maybe learn a little bit of how to implement specific areas. But if you haven't attended our Lunch and Learns, really the focus of these sessions are to provide you with a little more in-depth learning experience. It's a very informal session, so we can talk candidly about the functionality and what tools are there. But today we're going to talk about Enterprise PDM templates. Our agenda today is kind of a few things here. We're going to talk about what it is to be a template in Enterprise PDM. Now, the term template, we know what that means inside of SOLIDWORKS, but it actually has a different meaning inside of Enterprise PDM. So we'll go through that. And then there's two pretty well documented cases for using templates in Enterprise PDM. I want to go through the setup process for those. One is how to create projects and project templates. The other one is using Enterprise PDM templates to create documents. Now, what you'll find as I go through my presentation, and for those of you who have Enterprise PDM today, there's a lot of things that interact with each other when it comes to setting up these types of things. And you're going to see me bounce around to different areas, but I promise I will have a clear explanation of what I'm trying to accomplish and what tools I'm having to use to accomplish it. And then I want to just talk about leveraging existing templates. There's a wealth of knowledge internally here at CAD Dimensions that you can utilize. If you wanted to contact any of us and find out if there was any existing template examples that you can use to start with, we have the ability to leverage those and create your own templates from something that's already been worked on. So let's just start out, what is an EPDM template? Templates in Enterprise PDM automate the creation of something. Now I use that as a general term because they can automate the creation of folders in folder structures. It can automate the creation of a standard document. Let's say you have a spec sheet or a budget or a SOLIDWORKS template and you want to automate the creation of a SOLIDWORKS file. You can do that through an EPDM template. Now, why would you want to use an EPDM template versus using just a template in SOLIDWORKS to create files? Well, there's a lot of other things that get interacted with when you create a template in EPDM. For instance, it may issue a part number using a serial number generator. It may also copy custom properties to the files themselves. It may copy them to the folders that are created if you're creating a project. So there's other things that we can interact with by using an EPDM template versus using just templates inside of SOLIDWORKS. So I'm going to show an example of that today. But I want to start off, and this is going to be real visual today, I want to start off with one use case, which is creating project templates. This functionality really comes across to help with a very specific problem that companies have, in that you typically have multiple people creating folders either out on the server or on their own machines, and how they store data tends to be different from project to project. Now, if I'm looking for SOLIDWORKS files and I go in one project, I might find them one way. I go to the next project, they're not in the same folder, so I have to continually search. Now, this standardization of folders helps those of you who have to browse projects to find data a lot easier. Now, this project template functionality in Enterprise interacts with several other features of Enterprise PDM. First thing I want to do is I want to show you what a project template looks like, and we'll go ahead from there and create our own project template so you can see it. So I'm currently today working with two vaults. One I call the sandbox, which is how I recommend you work through the creation of a template. We can always export it from one vault to another, but give yourself a sandbox space to play. And then I have my production vault. Now, my production vault has my existing template for Enterprise PDM. Now, templates are accessed when you're logged into Enterprise PDM in the Windows Explorer interface by right-clicking and going down to the right-click menu for New, for creating new documents. Now, if you've never seen this before, if you look at the bottom half of this menu that's flying out, you can actually see, just create a new Excel format or a text document. This is stuff that Windows does now. Even without Enterprise PDM, you'll see this functionality to create new documents on the fly. But what Enterprise PDM templates allows me to do is create my own structure on the right-click menu where I can create and automate projects and document creation. In this case, since we're talking specifically about project structures, I'll go ahead and initiate my project template where I want a custom project. Now, what you're seeing pop up is something we call a template input form. It's a way of asking the person who's initiated the project template some information. Now, you'll notice that what it's done is automatically extracted the next project number in line. Now, I'll talk about how we do that. It pulled my name, the logged in user, and today's date so that it captures who has done this particular job. I can give this a project name. We'll call this Lunch and Learn. I also have, as part of this input form, a list of customers. So I can say, you know what, this is Demo Inc., and Demo Inc. is located in Ohio. And if I want to provide a further description about the project, I can. Now, what I want to say about this input form is it's customizable. It's made for you. So you choose what information you want to gather from the end user to create the project structure. And I'll show you as we create one why we want to ask these questions. Now, when I say OK to this, what you'll notice in my folder tree here is that it's now created a folder for the project, and it's automatically named the project number, plus the company name, plus the location. If I go into that folder, you'll notice that it's already created all the subfolders for me. It's already knows what the project name is. Now, for each folder in Enterprise PDM, we also have something called a folder card. It's copied all that information down to the folder card, so every folder, it knows it's part of a particular project. And finally, if I get all the way down, it created a SOLIDWORKS folder, so my structure is well formatted. And it's repeatable. So if I go back to that same spot and say New, Project, Custom, and I pick some of the same stuff here, okay, it creates the next project with the next name, with the next location in the same structure. So it gives me a way to standardize on it. So let's go through how is this done? How is this created? It's actually fairly simple. Now I want to take you into our sandbox for a moment. My sandbox is just another vault, except this particular vault has nothing in it. Okay, so we're looking at a vault with no folders. This is just a local folder. If I right-click on this vault, you can see that I don't have the option to create a project. Okay, So how do we do this? Now, for those of you who do not have Enterprise PDM, a majority of the customization or setup to the product is done through a tool called Enterprise PDM Administration. And in the administration tool, it's kind of broken out into the different areas and items that you would set up, but one of those items is called a template. Now, before I initiate the creation of the template, I want to think first about what questions I want to ask the user when I create a project. Now, I'm going to keep this one real simple for example, but there's two things that are important to me. First, I want to pull a project number. And second, I just want to have some sort of description or customer name. Let's use customer name in this case. So I mentioned kind of at the beginning that when you get into templates, it kind of touches different features inside of Enterprise PDM. And because I'm asking the software to initiate a project number, I'm going to touch a function in Enterprise called serial numbers. And since I'm asking the software to provide a form to input for the template, I'm going to use something called a template card. So let's start first of all with our project serial number, because we're going to utilize this for our project name. So in order to create a new serial number, you just right click on it, and I'm just going to call this my project number. Now, what I want that number to be, now this format can be anything you want it to be. I'm just going to call this project dash, and then I'm going to use a 4-digit number, a 4-digit counter, or let's use 3, and I'm going to start at 100. Let's see my numlock on. Okay. So I'm creating a serial number that's going to start at 100, and it's going to keep track. Every time I create a project, it's going to pull the next number. Okay, so that's the first piece that's going to help us with the creation of our template. The second one is that form that popped up that allowed me to ask information of the person initiating the template itself. So that's called a template card, or we used to call it a template input form. Now, if I select the template card and say new card, it brings up a blank screen that allows me to set up what I want the card to look like. Now, this can be pretty unique. These cards can have pull-down menus, they can have visuals, images. You really set up how you want the card to look. I'm going to keep things very, very simple in this case. Now, the type of card that I'm creating, because there's so many different types of cards, I want to make sure it says template card. Because of the way I initiated it, it is going to come up correctly. And I need to create some fields in here that are going to be utilized by the system. Now, the first one is an edit box. Now, there's different ways of pull-down menus or drop boxes or lists. An edit box just allows me a field that I can type in information. Now, you'll notice once I place that on there that it gives me some options as far as what this field really means. Now, we're not going to go through all of this today, but first thing I need to think about is what is the information? How do I describe the information? If I look in here, let's see if we have project number. Perfect. We have what amounts to a custom property called project number. Okay. Now, how do we get that project number? Are we going to let the user type in the value? That's okay, but we want to really use the serial number. So under the portion where it says default value, I can tell it to use a serial number, and I can tell it which serial number to use. In this case, it is my project number. Now, if I don't want them to overwrite the number, I can even set it to read only. Okay. Now, even though I've tied this to what amounts to a custom property or a variable, I also want to describe this field, and we describe this field just using static text. So we create a little bit of static text here that says project number. That way when I initiate the card, I know what that is supposed to look like. Now, since we're keeping this simple, I'm going to do the same thing again for customer name. Okay, but this time I'm going to leave the field open for somebody to type it in. I want to see if I have a property called customer name or customer or something that makes sense. Here's customer name. Okay, I don't want it to be read only. The default value is going to be text, and we'll go ahead and describe the field using static text. I'm just going to call this customer. So now we have a form. It's not pretty at this point, but we have our form. We'll go ahead and save it, give it a name. We'll call this my project template card, and just save it into the vault. Okay. So once I've created the card that I'm going to use to interface with my template, I'm ready to go ahead and start creating that the physical template that we're going to use. Now, as you watch me go through this process, you will see that I do a lot of iterations. I make changes, I test it, I come back and tweak it. I think that's the best way to do this, and by giving myself that sandbox, that vault that I can play in, it allows me to do that. So initiating templates, again, we're in the administration tool of Enterprise PDM. We can go ahead and right-click on the templates folder and initiate a new template. Now this particular screen or set of screens is kind of like a wizard. You start at the very first page and you work your way to the end, and once you provided all the information, you should be able to execute your template if it's set up correctly. Now the first page is asking me how I want the template to look on my right-click menu. Now taking you back here for a moment, let's just look at what my other one looked like here, just to get us thinking. When I right-click, I have the new submenu, and then I have 3 more submenus within that. And those menus can have even further menus if I wanted to. So that's what this is really saying, is what you want the menu structure to look like when you right-click. In this case, I wanted to say project, so new project, and then if I use the back slant here, we can go ahead and tell it what the submenu is going to be. I'm just going to call this custom project. Custom project L&L, because I might have more than one. Now once I have the submenu structure set up, I can go ahead and work my way to the next screen. And the next screen is specifically about permissions. Now this kind of brings me back around to the whole idea that when you touch templates in Enterprise PDM, it really touches a lot of other areas of the setup. But specifically here, we're trying to decide whose permissions are used to physically create the folders that get created by this template. Now the reason this is even a question is because some people in the Enterprise PDM Vault might not have permissions to create folders at all. So what would happen is they would go to initiate the template and it would fail out because it cannot create folders. They didn't have permissions to create folders. So there's 2 approaches to this. We can tell it to use the permissions of the user that's trying to initiate the template, or we can tell it to use permissions from an admin. So temporarily they'll get administrative privileges, and it will use the admin password, username and password. They won't know what it is, but it will use that to initiate the template. What that allows you to do is not have to change their permissions so they can create folders all over the place in the vault. But it forces them that they have to use this template to create folders. Okay, I'm just going to use the logged in user in this case because I am logged in as the admin. Now the next field Our next pane in here is titled template cards. Now I think you got a sense of what we mean by template cards now. So if I select add card, it lists any template cards that have been created for that vault, and there's my project template card. Now as soon as I select the template card, you'll notice that the right hand side of the screen changes because what it's just done is it's looked onto the project card and it's determined the custom property variables that exist on that project card. And you remember when we named the fields, we said this is customer name, this is project number. Now, it's important to understand what it's trying to get at here. It's trying to understand what inputs the user is going to take from the project card. And then it's going to try to figure out what it's supposed to do with them. Now notice the right-hand column in this variables to copy. It's asking for a template variable. Now here's the best way I've found to explain this. Once the user inputs the customer name and gets the project number, the software wants to copy it out to like a clipboard in Windows. You know how you do a copy and paste? So what the template variable is asking you what to name this variable or custom property on the clipboard so it can be reused over and over and over again. Now, very simple. I need to create some template variables because I don't have any. Now there's a button down here for creating those variables, those clipboard names I'll call them. So we'll go ahead and grab that and I'll just tell the software I want a new template variable. Now this is how I like to organize template variables. I like to name them very similarly to the card variable that I'm copying. So in this case I'll call one T for template underscore customer space name. Okay. Now this information just says, okay, if I don't have that from the card, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to prompt the user to put in the information? Okay. I want one other new one. I want that to be project number, so we'll go T underscore project number. And the same thing is prompt the user. Now that I've created those, that clipboard space where I'm going to make the copy, I tell the software how to take that information and where to copy it to. So I'm essentially picking the same names, except I'm selecting the template information or the clipboard. Now everything I needed is set up in here, so I can go ahead and go to next on the screen. This is really where the work is done as far as the structure of the folders needs to be. Now in my case, I always want my projects to be located in the same spot within my vault. It's set up by default to always create the project in the folder that you right-clicked on. But if I start to create a structure like this, where I'm creating a new root folder, maybe I have a folder at the root called projects. Okay, so this button, yellow button here, allows me to create a new root folder. So it goes right into the vault under projects, and I can create a subfolder under there using the green button. So the subfolder might be custom projects. Okay. Now that's where things get unique every time I initiate the project template. So let's go ahead under there. We want to create a new subfolder. This is the subfolder I want to be named based upon the project number. So remember that clipboard that I talked about? The fact that we're going to copy those variables to this clipboard? Well, here's where I can tell the software that I want to go get that information off the clipboard and copy it to the name of the folder. And we do this with just a little bit of syntax. We just put a % around the variable that we want to copy. So it's T underscore project number, and then encapsulate it in another %. If I also want to have the customer name in there, I might just put in an underscore, do customer name, T underscore customer name, and then another % on the other end. So that's going to automatically name and number my folder. Now I can start to create the structure underneath it. I need a folder for CAD files. I need a subfolder for miscellaneous data. I need a subfolder for specification sheets. And I need a subfolder for correspondence or emails. Now, whatever the structure looks like here, you can create as many subfolders, as many levels as you need, but here's where you determine what that structure looks like each time. Okay. Now, I also mentioned that the folders, go back here for a moment, the folders that you select on have cards to them as well. And sometimes you want to copy the information like project number, project name, customer to those cards. So if anyone picks on a folder, that it has that information as well. Now here's how you do that. I'm not going to go through that with this particular example, but if you go to any of these folders and go to the properties of the folder, you can go in and tell it you want to take that information again off the format that we copied the variables to, the clipboard, and I want to copy them now down to the card, and it could be under the same name, under customer name. Okay, so now I'm copying them back the other way, project number, customer name. In this case, I'm not going to go about that. I can also set explicit rights. Maybe I'm creating a particular folder that I don't want somebody to have rights to, either a group or a user to have rights to those folders. I can set each folder individually from here. Okay. If I wanted to populate a particular folder with a document, let's for instance say I have a miscellaneous folder and I wanted to make sure that it gets populated with a document. Now, I would have to get that document and put it in the vault, but I can select a default document to use. And you're going to see a little bit of that with the SOLIDWORKS files. Now, once this is all set up, I think this is pretty self-explanatory as far as how to structure. The hardest part is just getting your variables and understanding how you want to copy and paste them. We just continue along in this wizard. And the next thing we're confronted with is the extension. Now all this really does is provide an icon for the user when they right click. Now there's all sorts of icons for different things inside of Windows. Let me find one that makes sense. We're creating a project, so maybe this one looks good. It looks like a folder with something coming out of it, so I'm going to use that one. That looks like a great icon. And then we'll go ahead and hit next. This is where we can control which users can use the template and what groups can use the template. Now I'm in a sandbox vault. The only person in this vault is the admin, so because we're going to test this thing out, we'll go ahead and give the admin permissions, say OK to it, and now we're ready to go ahead and test this out. Now, test it out is just like I showed you in our original vault. We right click, select new. We do have our sub menu titled project. And my icon, notice the icon from the selection, is Custom Project L&L for Lunch and Learn. When I select that, notice it grabs the project number. I cannot type in this field. We made that read only. And I have a customer name that I can provide. We'll call Acme Inc. It's not asking for any more information there. Once I say OK, key file name was invalid. So, here's an example. It's not working. Okay? So we got to figure out why it's not working. Now, the first thing I would think about is whether or not my user, which is Mr. Admin, has permissions to do everything that we're trying to do here. And I'm just going to make sure that this guy has permissions to do everything we're looking to do. And I think we should be okay. So let me just try that one more time. New project, custom L&L. We'll go test. Okay, so it was something in the syntax that I typed in. Let's just try that again just to make sure we can flush out why that didn't happen. I had that Acme INC with a dot, and the dot is what messed it up there, because a dot can't be in a folder name. If I just leave it at Acme Inc., I should be okay. Now remember, I told it not to create the project in the folder that I right-clicked in, but to create this menu where it's Projects, Custom Projects, and there's the two projects. Notice the second initiation of the project is Project 101 with the Acme Inc. So now I've standardized on the way that I create documents using templates inside Enterprise PDM. Okay, let's continue down this path a little bit, talk a little bit about the next use case. The next use case is probably going to be the first or the second way that you're going to initiate templates, and it's really tying it into SOLIDWORks and using templates in Enterprise PDM to initiate and kick off SOLIDWORks files, whether they're parts, assemblies, or drawings. We can use templates and tie them together, Enterprise and SOLIDWORks together. So we're going to get the benefit of some things that you saw in the project folders, in that we can get automatic naming of files. We can standardize on custom properties, this clipboard concept where we're copying properties between. I want to kind of take you through the thought process in starting this. Now, if I go to the root of my vault here, I do have a folder called templates. I'm just going to add that folder in there. What I want to do in this case is I want to create a location where I can store the default template. Now in SOLIDWORks, we have the same term, template, right? It means a part, assembly, a drawing that we copy and gets used to start all new parts, assemblies, or drawings. So I need to create a SOLIDWORks file that I can use for an Enterprise PDM template. So here's that process. I'm just going to go into SOLIDWORks. I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to use an existing template, maybe part inch. I'm going to maybe, let's show my planes. I want this one to have all the planes shown. I want it to be in an isometric, kind of in the center of the screen so I can see everything. But now, once I get all the properties set up and get it the way I want it, I'm going to just do a save as into the vault. I'm going to save it right to my sandbox under templates, and I'm just going to call this NP1, which is new part 1. Okay, and we'll do underscore inches, IN for inches. Okay. Now notice I saved a part. Okay, an SLD PRT file, not a SOLIDWORks template in this case. Now once I have that, now I'm ready to utilize that to create a enterprise PDM template that will help me to initiate the SOLIDWORKS files. Now, I will have to check in the template into enterprise. For those of you who are new to enterprise, that's a way of saying send it out to the server, capture this existing version, and secure it for me. Now I have my template in. Now let's go to the enterprise administration tool again. We'll go back to our little sandbox here. I'm going to just delete an old template I've been working with here. So we want to create a different type of template in this case. We're going to create a template that actually creates a file. Okay? In this case, the file creation, I don't want an input form. I don't want it to come up and ask any questions of my users, because when I create a part in SOLIDWORKS, it doesn't ask any questions. So we'll create a new template here. So what do I want my structure to be? Maybe I want SOLIDWORKS file and backslash part inch. Okay. So again, I'm directing the software to what I want the right-click menu to look like. I want to execute it as the logged-in user, which we talked about. Now in this case, because I don't have a card, I want to still gather some information up because I want the file to get renamed based upon a number that we're going to give it, a part number. Now, in order to do this, I'm just going to say OK to this because we have to create our own serial number for the part name. So we'll do the same thing. We'll just call this SW dash, and we'll give it a counter value of 4. So we're going to use SW dash 4 digits for the format of the part numbers. Okay, I can rename this. Open that up. We'll call this our part numbers. Now back to my template. Once a template is in there, you can always right-click on it and open it back up and continue to edit and make changes. So as we go back to the screen, I'm not using a card, so this information doesn't make as much sense, but I did want to gather something up ahead of time. And I do this with the template variable, and this is something slightly different than the project creation. I want a template variable. I'm going to just call T underscore part number. Now, do I want the user to type in a part number? Absolutely not. They're going to just make something up here, right? But under this type, I can tell the software, go get this information from a serial number. And then I can select the serial number to use that it's going to grab that information. Now, if you remember back to the conversation of what a template variable is, it's this clipboard. So I'm saying go to the serial number, grab a number, and put it on the clipboard, and I'll use it later. I'll use it for renaming. Okay. Working our way through, we hit next. Now, in the case of this type of template, you want the software to save it in the folder that the person right-clicked in, because they're typically going to be working in a particular project folder or some location. So we're going to not do anything with the folder structure in this case, but we're going to tell it to create files in the current folder. And there's a little button over here that allows me to select the new file that we're going to create. Now what I'm really looking to do in this case is select the template that we saved, our default template, which happens to be a SOLIDWORKS part, and say we're going to use that particular template. Okay, so now this brings up a whole nother screen that we haven't seen before. Now, first of all, it's asking where the original file was, and it captured the path. That's fine. Then it's asking me what I want the file to be named when it's completed. And we're going to just change the name here, and this is exactly how we rename the folders. We go %T underscore part number. We're copying this off the clipboard, %. So we're going to use that part number to rename it. Now the rest of this has to do with how it deals with properties, because once you create a file, the file has its own interface for putting in information. So do you want to show the file data card in this case? I'm going to leave it to show just so I can show you what happens there. In this case, do I want to check in the file automatically? But then also, do I want to take the information off the clipboard and copy it to the card that's created for the part? Now this will make more sense when I actually do this, but I'm going to copy this to part number here. I think it's just number on the card, so we'll use number. Okay, so once we have this all set up, the last two things we need to do, this is very important with the SOLIDWORKS, because what you select for a file extension is what triggers this to happen a certain way. So I want to make sure I select the SOLIDWORKS file in this case. So we're going to use SOLDPRT as my extension. We're going to set the permission for the admin on the last screen and say OK. Now, how does this show up? If I right-click, let me go to a folder that I would want it to be located. Right-click, New, SOLIDWORKS file, part inch. If I select it, remember that option in there that says Show File Data Card? Now, it automatically says it's going to use the number, which is the part number, to name the file. Remember, we also said to copy that information to a field on the data card called number. So not only did I put it on the clipboard, but I copied it to the file data card. All I have to do from here is tell the software to go ahead and create a file. And there's my SOLIDWORKS part document from inside of Explorer. Now that would be useful if I spent all of my time inside of Explorer initiating SOLIDWORKS files, but I'm typically inside of SOLIDWORKS initiating SOLIDWORKS files. Because I selected the SOLDPRT extension, that's what triggers this functionality. When I create a new document inside of SOLIDWORKS, you're going to have a tab titled SOLIDWORKS Enterprise PDM. Okay, and in there, you're going to find the template that we just created in Enterprise. So here's my file part inch template. I just say OK to it. Now this is going to act different than a SOLIDWORKS template. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to require you to save it into the vault. It tells you that you have to save it in the vault in this case. After it does that, it's automatically going to bring up the data card. Notice it pulled the next part number. It's copied the part number information to the data card. And when I'm ready, I go ahead and tell it to create the file, and up comes my default file, and I'm ready to go ahead and start creating geometry. I believe these are the two most used use cases for templates, but let's talk for a moment about what else it could be used for. I have an example of creation of an ECN file using this. You initiate a document through the organization like an ECN. You want to create it using a template. So I might create a template that, again, asks some questions of my users. In this case, it grabs an ECO number, it grabs the username and date, but I can capture the reason for an ECO, any comments. When it creates the file, in this case, it creates it in an ECO folder. It always puts it in the right spot. It copies the information to the data card. And this goes a little bit further. Watch as I go into this. Templates can go as far as, once you fill out the data, it can copy the information that it's captured off the clipboard all the way into the custom properties and into fields within the document. Okay, so this does allow for some further functionality. So I guess we'll close with this. The moral of enterprise PDM templates is really, one, for project templates is standardization of storage, and two is anytime you're using this to manage a document that gets routed through your organization and you want everyone to have access for things like change orders, deviations, spec sheets, and everyone's creating these using templates, you're going to use enterprise PDM templates to help you to do that. So I want to thank everyone for coming today. If you have any further questions, feel free to post them in the questions section of GoToWebinar. I want to thank everyone again for listening to me for 47 minutes. But thanks again, and have a good day.